Welcome back. Last time we briefly introduced the life and works of Mulla Sadra, and now we turn to his most famous philosophical text, al-Asfar al-Arba'a, and his grand synthesis of over 700 years of Islamic philosophical and theological thought to resolve the last outstanding problem regarding a philosophical proof for bodily resurrection. Now, as you recall, al-Asfar al-Arba'a means the four journeys. In order for you to realize how off the path of truth most Western scholarship until the last few decades on later Islamic philosophy has been, the greatest authority on Persian culture that the West produced until the 20th century was E.G. Browne of England, who wrote the 4-volume Literary History of Persia and so many other works. He was an incredible scholar, but he said in his 4-volume history that Mulla Sadra wrote a book which is called the Four Books, because the word Asfar could also mean the plural of Sifr, meaning book. So Browne thought these were the 4 books, and he never bothered to open the book to see what Mulla Sadra said at the very beginning, that this is a book in 4 journeys, which are the journeys of the soul to God. The first journey is from the creation, Khalq, to God, al-Haq. That's the journey that most mystics make. All people will have to make it either in this world or the next, according to religion. The mystics are those who make it in this world before dying. The second journey is fil haq, the journey in God. The third is the journey back from al-Haq to Khalq, but with God. That is, it is a journey from God to creation, but now with God. And then the fourth journey is the journey in creation with God, a journey fil halqi ma'al haq, which Mulla Sadra considers to be the highest state. It's really given by God to the prophets and the greatest saints. The fourth book of the Asfar on the soul is the most extensive treatment in all of Islamic civilization on our psychological and spiritual becoming. That is, transformation from this world until our meeting with God. In all of Islamic thought, no one has ever treated this subject with such amplitude. A great deal of it is based upon Ibn Arabi, but also upon his own illuminations, because Mulla Sadra believed that he kept receiving truths from the divine throne. Many times, in the middle of his writings, he suddenly breaks off, and he has a part called al-Hikmat al-Arshiyah, that is, wisdom descended from the divine throne. And then he says, quote, "This is what was just received by me within my heart," unquote. If somebody were looking for an Islamic book which would correspond to the Tibetan Book of the Dead, it's here. There are minute descriptions of what happens to the soul after death, what changes overcome it, what changes take place within it, and so forth. The book is very, very elaborate. The most advanced students, after having read Kalam and Suhrawardi and Ibn Sina and Ibn Arabi, then turn to the Asfar. And those who really study this book do so in a 7-year cycle with a master. Now, Mulla Sadra weighed the 700 to 800 years of Islamic philosophy before him, and there are 4 issues that particularly distinguish his philosophy from earlier schools and that form the principles of his intellectual framework to create his grand synthesis of the different schools of Islamic thought. These are 1. Being and its various permutations, 2. The theory of substantial motion, 3. Knowledge and the relation between knower and known, and 4. The soul and its becoming. The metaphysical doctrine of Mulla Sadra is based on the unity, primacy, and gradation of being or existence, wujud. Existence flows in a hierarchy from the absolute being, al-wujud al-mutlaq, or God, who is the source of all existence and yet is transcendent to it, to the lowest forms. Ultimately, there is only one reality, and it participates in grades and levels that differ from each other in intensity, as our readings discussed. Existence for Sadra is in a constant movement toward its perfection, which is also movement toward the divine source of the universe. This is referred to as transubstantial motion. Motion does not take place according to the accidents of quantity, quality, place, and position, as the Peripatetics held, but according to the category of substance. Sadra's theory of knowledge holds that knowledge is the union of the intellect, he or she who uses it to understand, and the intelligible. Another way of putting this is that knowledge is in the mode of the knower, all of which is discussed in our readings. And all of this provides the philosophical basis for Mulla Sadra's treatment of bodily resurrection, resolving the final outstanding problem between falsafa and kalam. Mulla Sadra's monumental work launched a renaissance of Islamic philosophy that, despite historical ups and downs, continues to thrive to this day in Persia and has produced major figures like Mullah Haji Hadi Sabzawari, who died in 1872, and Allama Tabatabai, who died in 1981, who is also a major religious scholar. This school has been brought to the West by Western-educated Iranians such as Sayyid Hossein Nasr, perhaps the best-known Iranian thinker outside the country. Islamic philosophy thus continues to play a central role for Muslims attempting to defend and live by the intellectual riches of their tradition. It is also appealing to ever greater numbers of Western students who see it as a source of meditation for their own intellectual concerns on the harmony between reason, inner vision, and revelation, which went in an entirely different direction in the 17th century with Descartes, the father of modern philosophy. That concludes our discussion of Islamic philosophy, and we now turn to Islamic art, which is the result of the interaction of all three dimensions of Islam, Iman, and Ihsan.